A local legend says that a monster lives in Lake Garda, and actually it's just like that. Its name is Bennie, but unlike all the other creatures that are usually defined as monsters, nobody should be frightened because this example of Benicosaurus lacustris is really very lovable. Occasionally, you might meet him taking a stroll along the lakeside promenade or sunbathing on the beach. Otherwise, you might see his long lobated tail sticking out of the water during one of his numerous swims during the day. However, don't take it for granted that you will meet up with him because the lovable monster is somewhat reserved. Every now and then, Benny has tried to chat with some of the people who live around the lake, but whoever has bumped into him has treated him as if he was a terrifying monster. So the lovable monster has decided to stay hidden in the depths of the lake, and only occasionally, if he wants to have a laugh, he enjoys himself by coming out of the water to see the reaction of whoever it is that sees him. Everybody, in fact, remains astonished when they see his body, which is 5 meters long and seems to almost belong to an enormous snake, if it wasn't for his huge round stomach. Benny moves very quickly between the waves, and whoever should have the time and luck to observe him a little longer will also be amazed at the sight of the 2 long barbs that come out of the sides of his mouth and the crest that runs along his head and back. 4 large fins help him to move quickly in the water. You might even say slide, seeing that his skin doesn't have scales to make resistance in the water. Benny arrived at the lake a long time ago. The lovable monster can't really say when because monsters have a different perception of time from us. Benny, however, remembers his family very well, and above all, if somebody is willing to listen to him, he can explain perfectly why his appearance is so unusual. Everything started about 7 million years ago, when, in reality, the lovable monster still didn't exist. It was then that his mother and father fell in love. She was a beautiful plesiosaur with a slender neck and a long tail, almost like in a fairy tale. You probably never would have thought that she would lose her head for an itosaur. Maybe it was the pronounced fin of Benny's father that attracted her, or one of those deep dives down into the water that he was so good at. In fact, when their eyes met under the water for the first time, they never wanted to leave each other. Very soon she gave birth to her youngling, that now, grown up, is our lovable monster of Lake Garda. This all happened in the Atlantic Ocean, where the southern currents have always crossed with those from the north in a never-ending journey from east to west and west to east. In the icy depths of the Atlantic, near the ice of the South Pole, ichthyosaurs and plesiosaurs lived alongside each other, and it was here that the lovable monster of Lake Garda spent his childhood. Benny loved going to visit all of his relatives. He felt he belonged to both families and maybe was given the best from each of them. His favorite cousins were also born from the meeting between the 2 species, and amongst them there was Nessie, who loved showing off and, in fact, in the future would become very famous. And then there was Lario, who had very similar tastes to those of Benny regarding currents, preferring fresh water. Benny and Lario often roamed around together. One of the best places preferred by the 2 cousins was the Mediterranean Sea with its gold, sandy beaches and numerous small internal seas where they found delicious seaweed and small tasty fish. Sometimes together they would adventure along rivers where the water was fresh and delicate in taste, and from there they would explore the numerous small basins scattered inside the continent. It was when he was wandering from place to place, about 5 million years ago, that the lovable monster started to realize something was changing. The water got colder from day to day, and the level seemed to be decreasing. So he started to become frightened and decided to return to the Atlantic Ocean to rejoin his family. When he was about ready to leave the Mediterranean, however, he realized that the sea had already lowered so much and so quickly that the entrance to the ocean was already closed. So for a long time, Benny continued to wander around alone in the sea and along the rivers that finished in these waters. Very soon, he started to see piles of salt emerge here and there, and he started to become anxious that maybe the sea would completely dry up. Where would he swim? Where would he find things to eat? Fortunately, one day a powerful wave arrived from the ocean, raising the water, even if it was still not enough to reopen the entrance. It was then that the lovable monster understood that he would never see his family again, and realized just how much he missed them all. The years passed by, and Benny learned to love the place in which he had settled, succeeding to make friends with numerous animals that lived there, and sometimes meet up with his cousin. It was Lario who introduced him to a really wonderful place, a corner situated between the Adriatic Sea and the Alps, a huge basin where the fresh water, descending from the mountains, mixed with the seawater, where today you find the Panadana Plain. Benny had always loved fresh water and decided to stay there. Sometimes he would swim upstream in the rivers which descended from the mountains. Otherwise, he would swim into that long fjord that today is known as Lake Garda. All of a sudden, while he took his early morning swim, Benny noted that the water was strangely cold, and that also it was hard to swim because the surface was starting to freeze, so sometimes he had to work hard to break the ice around him. One day, moving in that long inlet which would become Lake Garda, Benny noticed that a channel under the water surface led to a system of submerged caves. There, he could find shelter while all the outside world became covered with ice. That place, situated where today you can find the island of Garda, became his home for a long time. Fortunately, at a certain point, the ice started to withdraw. So Benny came out of his cave and discovered that a beautiful lake had been created around him, surrounded by mountains and numerous hills. He then realized that the way to the sea had been definitely closed, and with that the possibility of rejoining his family. He was very sad, but he consoled himself noting that some very deep channels had formed between the caves which had protected him up to that moment. Who knew where they went? Adventuring in one of these channels, he came out into another lake, which probably also had glacial origins, today known as Lake Como. And with great amazement, he found his dear old friend Lario. Can you imagine the joy when they met each other? Anyway, Benny decided to return to his home water, happy to be able to go and find his cousin any time he wished. In the course of time, Benny witnessed a lot of events around the lake. He saw a lot of the big animals with whom he had made friends slowly disappear, and he saw others originate. Then he noted the diffusion of strange beings with 2 legs who constructed pile dwellings and other buildings. Human beings. In various occasions, the lovable monster tried to get acquainted with these people who lived around him, but anybody who saw him was very frightened. There were those who screamed, those who ran away, those who warned the others and organized hunting trips, which he was very good at evading by swimming somewhere else. It was then that Benny decided that until human beings showed him they were going to be kinder, it would be better to stay out of their way. So that's what he did. For many years, he only emerged from the water for a quick snack or when he needed to take a look around. When on his favorite island, which was right on top of his ancient home, a colony of monks was established, the lovable monster decided it was time they should get to know each other. But soon, He realized that he had made a big mistake again. When one of those religious people saw him, even he started to tell everyone that he had seen a monster, a horrifying creature. And then somebody even tried to dive to discover what was really under the island. And when the diver saw Benny just for an instant, he became white in the face from fear. Up to today, Benny has continued to live all alone in the lake, and his appearances are always less frequent. But since his story arrived on the television recently, his fame has grown all out of proportion. So much so that people come from far away just to try to get to know him. Of Benny, however, there's no trace, and when someone thinks they have sighted him, hardly anybody believes them. But the lovable monster is there somewhere, out in the clear water of the lake, and only those who believe in legends will have the luck to see him.